So I'm walking along this week. It's quite early, it's not even 5:30 yet. So hopefully I'll get home before it's too hot. But I don't know if you can see, there's what we call larron. They're flying termites in the air. They sort of come out, they swarm around, a bit like mayflies. And they sort of swarm and hit your building, then die. I believe what they do is they burrow under the ground then, but most of them die. And yeah, it happens once a year, and this will go on for just a couple of days, that's all. There's one. Yeah. So they're not orbs, they're what we call larron. They're a type of termite. Now, you'll be seeing this long after these incidents, but there were two incidents in the mainstream media news last week, or was it the week before, both of which have disturbed me greatly. Probably because they only confirm what I already knew in my heart. But firstly was the flagrant misrepresentation of a football or soccer hooliganism in a major European city. And to the extent that I think it's fair to call it outright lies. And the second one was the admission that somebody on the board of directors of the major fact checkers was also on the board of directors of a major pharmaceutical company. Now, I did talk about what is truth in a post-truth world, but those two incidents really have brought this home dramatically to me. That media outlets, that certainly one of them that I would religiously watch and believed every word they said, have blatantly lied about the incidents surrounding this football match. Blatantly lied. And they can only be doing it to manipulate the public's feelings in favour of one group against another. But that leads to another issue, and that is my concern that we're being manipulated to become increasingly tribal. And of course the other incident was that, and you know, I'm having still to be careful what I say now on this platform, even though I wouldn't say anything that's not the truth. But we were told during the health crisis that this was fact checked, and you know, this was right and this was wrong. And it was always in favour of the prophylactics that we were being encouraged, in fact, sometimes enforced to take. Cajoled, at least in my, well, no, enforced in my case, even though it was against my wishes, really. And we find that one of the directors of the fact-checking company was also a director of the very company that manufactured these prophylactics. Now, what I've noticed about the world since this health crisis is that people have become very angry, very tribal, very aggressive to each other, very narrow-minded. And, you know, we know that Department 77 from the British Army were engaged in profiling the British public into specific psychological profiles, presumably so that they could manipulate those profiles. But in doing so, they're creating tribalism. So when we think of what happened, you know, in this major European city and the lies about what actually happened, this is another part of this creating tribes. Presumably, it's about divide and rule. And, you know, thinking about the fact-checking thing, what we've also done is we've glorified, as it were, the head and taken away gut feelings, feelings from the heart. But in a post-truth world, what is this from the head meaning? Because they can simply manipulate the fact checkers, manipulate the facts. So we've got people that sort of are at the extreme of the Enlightenment, if you like, that everything is black and white, everything is either this or that, and there's no room for greyness. But it's creating, well, society's turning into a monster that hates humanity as a result. And you might well be asking, why am I going on about this? You know, what on earth do I mean? Well, if you remember, I'd had problems with Aviva in them paying out my pension, and anyway, a complaint was put in that I didn't really agree with that complaint, but a complaint was put in, found in my favour. They apologised and have offered me compensation that I've not yet taken. But now they've come back to me and asked me to prove my address in Indonesia. Well, in Indonesia we have official ID cards, so it's a very simple thing. But the ethnocentricity or the black and whiteness of the people that work there mean that they won't accept what in Indonesia is the proof and want the sort of proof you'd get in England. Now, the usual proof in England is a utility bill not more than 3 months old. Now, I think probably even in England that's getting difficult to come by, but the only utilities we have in Indonesia are electricity. They don't send out paper bills, and the name on the account is the person who opened it, not the person who now either owns or lives in the house. So, you know, completely impossible to supply a utility bill. And I've explained that to them. I've also explained I'm not allowed to own property. So, you know, I would never have a bill in my name. And they've come back and said, don't be so stupid. Of course you get a utility bill sent to your house. And not only do I not get the level of ethnocentricity and people sort of glorifying their own ignorance, you know, gloating in how ignorant they are of other cultures, but also, you know, the downright aggression of it, the downright aggression towards a customer, you know. And to be perfectly frank with you, why do they need to verify my address anyway? Yeah, I've no idea. You know, I mean, surely, well, yeah, there's no reason. There's no reason. You know, I'm sure they'll say I'm sure they'll say it's security. And I feel this is a bit like the banks, you know. Well, you know, any financial service provider, if they're having to make all these things so difficult for security reasons, doesn't it tell them that there's something wrong with these processes that they're attempting to patch up? Weren't they completely wrong to go down the road of centralised and digitised systems? And they were much better when they had decentralised systems involving human input. Of course, they can't sack as many people and make as much money, so we know why they've done it, but it's the customers who are suffering, isn't it? Now, when we last spoke, I said that in Indonesia, well, seemingly the Indonesian bank, or maybe the Bank of Indonesia, had rejected the payment of my inheritance from my solicitor or lawyer. And I've been waiting on this for over 2 years now. So just as the payment was due to reach me, it was rejected. And I was asked by the solicitor to find out why. And you think to yourself, well, hang on a minute, what do I pay my solicitor for? But even more so, the banks charged a lot of money. I didn't want it to go through the bank, but the banks charged a lot of money. What is the job they're doing for all this money? Surely they know the regulations in Indonesia. Now, I have to say, I can always forgive my banks in Indonesia an awful lot, because they're extremely courteous to me. They might do things wrong, but they're always very nice to me. And the other thing is that the person I deal with is in a tribute band to Oasis. So he knows that I've lived in Manchester and have, well, met the brothers. So, you know, he gives me wonderful service. But what I've discovered is that the banks are complete silos. So what goes on at the very top is never communicated to the bottom. So I've told him and many others in the bank that I'm expecting a lot of money and it'll be coming goodness knows when, but they couldn't help me that much. But nobody stopped to tell me there may be a problem. And in truth, I think the local branch staff aren't aware of restrictions on the amount of money you can send to Indonesia. And so I've been trying to look at them. And from the best I can tell, and you know, all law in Indonesia is subject to interpretation and change. But it would seem that one can only send a maximum of about $60,000 in one go, and a maximum of $100,000 in a single month. So it's most likely that my bank didn't even block it, and that it came from the Bank of Indonesia. So I'm saying, why the hell hadn't my solicitor looked into it? And why the hell didn't the banks, the sending banks, tell her? And the easiest way to send it all would be via my Wise account. But my solicitor said that they couldn't use my Wise account. And when I asked, they said industry best practice. Now, you know, red light goes off. Why have I got a psychopath for a solicitor? Well, probably because of every service provider in the UK and probably around the world has a psychopath taking decisions, you know. So everything that happens to us now comes from a psychopath. But, you know, if only they'd listened to me, we wouldn't have any of these problems. I could have had it sorted a long, long time ago. But I'm not certain they're going to back down. And, you know, quite apart from anything else, I will lose between 5 and 15% of the value of the transfers. So here I am, living in Indonesia. I lived a long time. No expert on living in Indonesia, I'd be the first to say. But both my solicitor and Aviva are telling me that I'm wrong about how things should be done in Indonesia. And it's just based on complete xenophobia and I think a degree of, if not psychopathy, certainly narcissism, you know, and it's ruining all our lives, isn't it now? It's got to the stage where our lives are becoming completely unlivable thanks to the influence of psychopaths and narcissists. And you might think, well, how's that related to the lying about events in the major European city over the football match. Well, it is, isn't it? You know, they're turning us into these nationalistic, chauvinistic automatons that, well, yeah, think they have the right to tell people who clearly know more than them, people who aren't ignorant, let's put it that way, but they have the right to tell people what they should do, what is the truth, when they're so blatantly wrong. And just another minor part to all this, an English address that Aviva was sent, they've said isn't the address they had. Now I can only think that there's a minor difference in it, and I suspect it's they're using something called the postal address file, which I used to use in my business, but it was created to support identifying the correct address, not to beat people on the head because of a government agency or service provider hadn't put the address in correctly, and therefore their documents aren't identical. You know, it's a madness we're in now, isn't it? A total madness. Now, I took a break then because I was walking up a hill, so I'm panting a little now. But as I was walking up the hill, for some reason, my phone went into aeroplane mode and tried to clone itself. And I think this leads to the bigger thing that I want to say. Postal address files, digitisation, computers, mobile phones. Aren't they meant to be empowering us, not enslaving us? And AI, even greater ability. You know, you replace those Jobsworths that are causing me problems with a computer and you'd never get through it. Now, it's said that technology is neutral and it's the people that are wrong. But what that doesn't recognise is that around 20% of the population are either psychopaths or narcissists, and they're the ones in control. So what I'm really saying is, particularly using AI, but a variety of technologies, psychopaths and narcissists are imposing their worldview on the rest of us. And isn't it time we called a halt and said, what is anything about? Is it not so that humans should live happily with each other? I know you'd say, oh, we need to check your postal address file because of fraud. But you know, why do we need pensions? Why do we need companies? Why do we need money? You know, if it's all going to cause this many problems, could we not live happily together without any of these institutions? And you know, you might say, why am I talking so crazy? Of course we need businesses, and insurance, and savings, and pensions, and money, all these other trappings, you know, economies, etc., nations, etc., etc. Well, it's because I'm here. I'm here where God intended, how God intended it to be, and where He supplied us with abundance. That's why I think differently.